Hello everyone, and welcome back to the garage. This is part 4 of the restoration series on the Close Encounters of the Third Kind pinball machine. And in this video, we're going to install the new CPU board that I bought, as well as replace that shorted transistor on the driver board, and we will see if the system is able to start up now. So let's get started. All right, so while I wait for my new board to arrive, I figured I would take care of the last couple things underneath the playfield that needed to be taken care of. The first one is there was a problem with the roto motor, and what was going on is I took the target assembly out, so that is what this looks like when it's removed from the machine. And so how this works is this will spin, and then there's these little spring-loaded contacts on the bottom that will make contact on this little PCB assembly right here. And so that's how the game knows which targets are actually being shown to the player on top of the playfield, and that's how it knows to score correctly. So for example, if you had a star 500 and 400 at the top, it would know that based on the position that the rear contacts were in. So that's kind of a neat little assembly. But what's going on is the target assembly is hooked with 3 screws right here, and what was happening is there's a coil that will move this little gear assembly, and it should move the target assembly attached to the shaft as well. Well, what was happening is it was moving the gears, but it wasn't moving the target assembly, so it had come loose from the shaft. So I had to take the target assembly out so I could tighten these 2 little Allen screws that secure the holder for the target assembly to the shaft, and now that problem is all fixed. All right, my parts for the Gottlieb have arrived. So I bought some transistors to fix the driver board, and then I also received my new CPU board. This is a Ni-Wumpf Mark II. And as you can see, this is actually a pretty small board. It's roughly the size of the original driver board, so it's much smaller than the original CPU board. It came with its own manual and schematic, which is nice, so all I have to do is mount this board into the machine and solder on at least one of these transistors, this one here, to fix the driver board. I don't know if it's going to need these. These are for the lamps and solenoids, and this was the big one that shorted on the driver board, so I'll definitely install that one. As far as mounting this board is concerned, you can actually modify the machine and have it fit perfectly, because how the original board was mounted, this bottom piece right here looked exactly like this top one with these 2 mounts on the very edge holes. So if you take out the 3 screws that secure this mounting piece in, you can take some pliers, pull these out, and move them to these spots. And so when you have them in a little rectangle like this, they will fit perfectly for the Ni-Wumpf board. So that is where that's going to go. So I'll go ahead and get that transistor soldered in, and we'll get the Ni-Wumpf board installed, and we'll see if the system will actually boot now. All right, so that is what it looks like with the Ni-Wumpf board installed. And as you can see, it fits in the holders perfectly. So it is held very nicely in the machine. The driver board, I have the new transistor hooked up and soldered on. And so now we're ready to power on this machine and see if it will actually start up. So it should actually do something this time because we replaced the entire computer. So when I turn the game on, we should actually see life out of it now. But what I did do, and what we're going to be doing when testing out the new board, is I unhooked every display except for the player 1 display, because I want to test the displays one by one and see if we have any that are not working. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. And so I don't think this board is going to operate exactly the same as the old board, because it fixes some Gottlieb quirks, like it doesn't rely on the slam switches anymore to actually work properly. So this board actually adds quite a few new features to the game that are present only on newer games from like the 80s and 90s. I don't know if I'm going to enable those features because I prefer to keep things more stock, but I will go through those features and see what I want to enable. For now, let's just see if it works. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the power switch. Player 1 display is connected. Hey, look at that! We do have a working display. It kind of strobes in the camera, but in person, it is solid. So it says game. Now, the reason it says that is because this board comes out of the box not set for a specific game. So this board supports every game in the System 1 library. So it's asking me to choose which game this is. So I will do that after I verify that all the displays are working. But as you can see here, the Player 1 display is working. Now we'll hook up the Player 2. And we'll turn it on again. Yep, Player 2 is working. And once we get all the displays hooked up, I will go in and do the display test to make sure that all the segments are working. But what I am noticing is that the high game to date light is not on, and neither are any of the playfield lights. I don't have them shown, and that means that the driver board transistors were actually fine. The only one that had issues was the one that I replaced, so that is good. All right, now the Player 3 display is connected. I don't know if it's gonna show anything, but we'll see if it does. Yep, it does. So Player 3 is working. All right, now I got Player 4 connected. There they are. Every display is working. I might have to rejuvenate them a little bit. I mean, they're not super dim. This one's a little bit dimmer, so maybe I will do that one, but they do all work. So that is nice to see. What we can actually go ahead and do now is select the game. As you can see, the first game is Cleopatra. That was the first Gottlieb System 1 pinball machine. Okay, so we have to push the start button to go through the list of games. So let's go through here. Sinbad, Joker Poker. These are the names of all the System 1 games. Dragon, Solar Ride, Countdown. There we are, Close Encounters. So that is the option we want. And then we just have to press the test button inside the coin door to get out of this. Okay, so the game is working. Ooh, it's doing an attract mode sequence. That is something that System 1 games never had, but this board adds it. So as you can see, the lights are doing a little sequence there. That is a feature specific to the Ni-Wumpf board. These System 1 machines never had an attract mode. I may leave that on, but I might turn it off so I can make it look stock. I just noticed there is a light that's not working. This one here. So probably a loose socket. So I'll go under the playfield and get that one fixed. But all the playfield lights, this one's loose too. I did notice that this one was loose because that was one of the ones that actually was staying on. But it looks like all the other lights are working. Nope, this one is also having trouble. So I think we might just have some loose connections. So I'll go under the playfield and fix those. But all the displays are working. Well, I still have to hook up the little status display there, but as you can see, they are working. All right, I've gone ahead and hooked up the status display, and as you can see, it does work. So all the displays in this machine do actually work. So I'm not sure what the deal was with the high voltage fuse being blown when I first got this machine, because obviously all the displays are fine. What I believe the cause of that was the capacitor on the power supply for the high voltage was leaking, and that caused the fuse to blow. But we replaced that, and as you can see, all the high voltage is fine because the displays are running. I might have to do a little 5-second rejuvenation on these two displays here because they're a little bit dimmer than the two on the left, and I did not rejuvenate these two. I did run these two through it. So that's why they're a little bit brighter. This one looks good, so I don't think I'm going to touch that one. But there we go. As you can see, this game now starts up, and that's the first time it's ever done that. I would have fixed the original board if I could, but because the CPU board had an unobtainable chip that went bad, I had to get a replacement. All right, so I've kind of familiarized myself with the way to configure this board. So what we can do to kind of go through and test everything is we can go into the test menu by pushing the little button in the coin door. So that goes to setup. So in the setup menu, you can adjust like game features like the high score to date. If you want to enable the specific feature to the Ni-Wumpf board to give you 4 high scores, like on newer machines, you can set the number of balls per game, just things like that. We're going to skip past that, and we are going to go to hardware. And so if we push the start button, I think the first thing it's going to do is go into display test. Now, this isn't going to show perfectly on camera because the displays roll in the camera, but we'll do it anyway. So it says displays, so I think we have to hit the start button again to do it. So it looks like all the segments are working. And they indeed are. So yeah, the displays are working. Let's go to the next test. Let's hit the start button again. Okay, now it's doing a different test where it's doing the numbers across the displays. So it seems like that is working. So the next one, oh, that just restarts the display test. Okay, so let's go to the next test, lights. So we'll hit the start button to activate that test. Yep, and there go the lights on the play field and the back box. And as you can see, the high game to date light is actually working, so it was not a problem with the driver board. And you can see there the play field lights are flashing. The only ones I'm going to have to adjust are the middle drop target light here, this hit light, and rollover A. All the rest of the lights are working. So let's go to the next test now. Coils. So this is going to be a good test to see if everything works. So I'm going to lower this down to the playfield. I'm going to put all the drop targets down, and we're going to see if all the solenoids work. So I'm going to hit the start button, and we should see all the solenoids fire. So the motor was working. That was the only solenoid that I have not tested. Okay, there is a switch test, but I went past it, so let me go back to that. So going to the switch test, it looks like it outlines the switch on the player 3 display. So let's roll down. I'm going to roll down the in lane A on the top. Okay, so it does show it as 12, and so when I let go, it goes back to 0. So, ooh, clean switch. I thought that was kind of interesting. I was reading about it. If it detects a switch input in like 50 milliseconds from the same switch, it'll think that the game has a dirty switch. So I thought that's kind of a really nice thing to kind of tell you, hey, maybe you need to file down this switch or just give it a little cleaning. So let's do that one again. Okay, now it's not doing it. So that switch, I guess, kind of cleaned itself. That's rollover C, and that is working. All right, I put the game back into game over mode, and I put a brand new pinball inside the out hole there because the old one had quite a bit of rust spots on it. So I'm going to go ahead and push the start button. I imagine this board is set to free play mode. Let's see what it does. Yep, that was correct. The player 1 display is flashing, and it says ball in play 1. So let's see if the bumpers work. Oh yeah. This one, it has a broken switch under it, so it will pop, but the switch to actually make it score is broken. I will fix that. So that works, and that one works, and it scored. So that's great. So why don't we play a quick little game here and just see if things work. So it seems like things are good. So it is working properly, so that is nice. The bumpers are working, the slingshot worked as you saw, and it seems like everything besides the one broken switch on this bumper is working. I can tell this machine needs to be leveled. It is very out of order. Oh, I guess it is set to 5 balls per game. Maybe it didn't save the setting. I'm going to stop right here, though, because you can see the game is working well. And the driver board is actually working perfectly, except for that one transistor that I had to replace. So the other transistors I ordered are just going to have to be spare parts in case things do go bad. So yeah, Close Encounters of the Third Kind works now. New CPU board, power supply fixed. And so now the only things that need to be done to it are fix this bumper switch, and I'll show you what's going on under there. I have to fix some of the lamp sockets because they're loose. I think that's it. So now let's go ahead and solve the few remaining issues that still exist within this machine, and then after that, it will be a 100% working pinball machine. So here's what's going on with the upper pop bumper. So if we take a look at the lower one, you can see how it works. There are 2 sets of switches, here and here. The upper one is what the actual ball hits when it rolls across the bumper. So when it hits this, it will close the top switch. You can see how that works. And then that will cause the bumper to pop, which is this mechanism here. And when that pops, it will close the bottom switch. And the bottom switch is what gives you points. But if we look at this one, you can see we have the top switch, but we only have 1 contact on the bottom one. That is why the bumper pops, because the top switch is working, but the bottom one is just gone. So that's why it doesn't score. So what I need to do is take the other screw out. I already took out the first one. And then I can remove this part of the switch assembly, get out the old part of the switch that's still in there. Then I have to desolder these 2 wires from it. And then I'm going to solder on a new switch to right there. And then that bumper will actually score again. All right, I installed a new switch assembly for the bottom switch on this bumper, and I didn't have the right style switch, so I cut off a flipper switch down to size, and it works good. So now if I push the bumper down, it actually scores. And so that is the last of all the mechanical problems in this game. I just have to do some switch cleanup and tune up, and then it should be good to go. So that concludes the Gottlieb Close Encounters of the Third Kind restoration series. This is now a fully working pinball machine with a brand new CPU board, and with this machine restored, This is the last pinball machine that I have that needs restoration. So all of the pinball machines that I've accumulated over the last few months have been completely restored and are now 100% working. So I hope you enjoyed all of my pinball restoration videos, and I'm sure in the future there will be more to come, but for now this is going to be the last one. So thank you all for watching. I'm going to include some gameplay footage of this machine at the end of the video if you want to see it in action. So if you want to see that, continue watching to the very end of the video. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video.